He's definitely brutal, he's always savage, and you're definitely getting wrecked.
A couple of months ago, you might have heard me on Listen Loco tease that I was going to be on an upcoming, at the time, Riot broadcast. Now, I promised everyone this would be a big boy broadcast, like a serious broadcast in one of the major regions, but I didn't tell which one it was, and I didn't actually even hint as to which one it was, because I wanted to leave it up in the air so that it would be a fun surprise for people that on the day it was announced, they'd just see that there I am, I'm on a broadcast, what capacity am I on it, what region is it in? Obviously, there's a lot of different regions it could be in, right? Obviously, I've worked with many, many American companies in esports, perhaps it's the LCS, they need a little bit of spice, right? Maybe it's the LEC, which many people speculated for, right? Because obviously, not only is it in Europe anyway, it's held in Berlin. I live in the Netherlands. The finals even were going to be held in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. I live in the Netherlands. They've brought on other outside talent this split, including Machine and Frankie. People who can't work from games like CSGO and other games. They've brought in outside talent. They've shown they're willing to work with freelancers. Wasn't them. I thought maybe people might even speculate it's the LCK, right? Think about my history going to Korea many, many times. I've actually known a lot of people in the Korean esports industry. Obviously, they've used a lot of talent which wouldn't perhaps get on Western desks as much, like LS, etc. They've worked with Monty, obviously, very long time, so maybe they were open to it. The actual story is it was going to be the LPL, believe it or not, the Chinese League of Legends top division. But Riot Games fucked me over. Good old Riot Global Office decided to take a big shit all over that. So here's the story of how this happened. I'd been in contact with the people behind the English language stream of the LPL for most of the spring split of this year, because they'd reached out initially. They wanted to actually expand their coverage in the English speaking world for season 9 due to the fact the LPL is in a very great state in China. Obviously, incredibly successful recent results. Invictus Gaming winning Worlds. Last year was the year of the LPL teams. RNG won everything except Worlds. Amazing, amazing season. So why not try and expand? Why not try and get English language viewers in the same way as you have English language viewers watching LCK to watch Korea? And what was the reason they used to watch Korea? Because it was the best region. So if LPL is the best region now, I would say personally, I don't think it's that debatable. If you look at the top 5 to 6 LPL teams, then why won't Westerners watch the LPL? Well, maybe they didn't have the right coverage set up. Maybe they didn't have the right journalists covering it. So this made a lot of sense to me. I discussed it with them. This was actually some of the inspiration behind why I decided to start my LPL podcast. I made a podcast called Middle Kingdom Minds back when I was working for VP Esports, who also at their core are a Chinese company. And I was working with my co-host was Raz for that show, who Berento. Obviously, people might know he works on the LPL broadcast as an analyst, as a commentator. And it was going pretty well. We had pretty good rapport. And so in the process of all of this, they'd also talked to me from the LPL about, if you could just come out to China, it'd be so cool. We could set you up with interviews with big name LPL pros. A lot of the teams want some Western exposure. They want some of your caliber doing interviews like that, getting this information out there to West audiences. And obviously, what my career's been like. Long form video interviews have been a big part of it. The Reflection series, Grilled, it's SK one-on-one if you go back far enough. It's been one of my passions. So I thought, yeah, cool, awesome. Because I know if you go to the Asian countries, Korea particularly, I found this when I first went there, if you don't have the connections to the team, if you don't have the connections to the league, it's really hard to get in that team house. It's really hard to get those interviews. It's not like Westerners where I can just message Björkson or whoever and say, hey, you up for an interview? And he'll say yes or no, and maybe he has to check with his team. But aside from that, it's up to him whether he does it or not. No, it's a lot more difficult. So I thought, right, well, I've got all these connections, of course. So I told him, yeah, I'd be up for that. And then you know what? It just so happened, I didn't know this for myself was going to be the case. Then I got hired to do a CSGO event in China, which was Star Series Season 7, Star Ladder Star Series in I-League, it technically should be called. And it was the Season 7 event. If you follow CSGO, it was the one that was won by Na'Vi over Fnatic in the final, and it was held in Shanghai, China. So when I found out I was going to be booked for that event, I thought, right, great, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I went back to the LPL people. I told them, great news. I can actually get it so that someone will fly me out to China. I'll tell them, just make the return date X days later after their CSGO event. After the CSGO event's done, I can work with you guys. I can come and do those interviews. We can do those sorts of things. And then LPL comes back to me. They're loving this idea. And they say, hey, what we want you to do is, would you come and appear on the broadcast? Now, at first, I think, are they meaning like just a short interview? Am I going to be an analyst on the broadcast? I could obviously do that role. Yeah, I'm not a mega analyst of like League of Legends draft or any of those factors, but I could do other aspects, as you've seen if you've ever seen me be an analyst or appear on talk shows before. So I thought, yeah, I'm possibly open to that. They actually wanted an even more bold offer. They said, we want you to come and be the desk host for the LPL semi-finals. I thought, wow, this is fucking amazing. Like, for anyone who doesn't know, like, I would consider that a great honour. I think LCK, LPL, some of the most prestigious leagues that you have in all of a League of Legends. I think of the great teams in the LPL. You go back to World Elite initially, obviously the old IG, then you have EDG, and all the other great OMG. How can we forget them, of course? And so, RNG now. I thought, yeah, this is great. This sounds amazing. Now, I did initially think, is that going to be okay, though? Like, I've never worked on a Riot broadcast before. Are they really going to be cool with that? They were like, no, don't worry about that. Like, everything's going to be fine. Like, you know, we get a lot of autonomy for these sorts of things. So I thought, yeah, brilliant. If that all makes sense, we'll do it. They even went further and said, could you stay even longer? Because I was only going to stay like a week and a half after the CSGO event. Could you stay like a couple of weeks and then do the final as well? Do the 2 semis and the final. And I even was thinking about it. I was thinking, oh, it would be an amazing experience, wouldn't it? To do the actual grand final of the LPL, be in some amazing location. Like, oh, that would be pretty sick, wouldn't it? But the problem is, I didn't want to stay there that long. Like, I don't want to be away from home with the CSGO event and all of that, like a whole month away from home. That's too much. Not only that, I always tell people this, my work that I do at CSGO events on desks is my side job. My main job is as a journalist putting out videos and articles and working on my talk shows and all the things that I do largely from home. I can do them abroad if I need to. I take the setup with me, but it's not as comfortable. The hours aren't as good. The internet isn't reliable. Sometimes behind a VPN in China. It just gets a lot more difficult to do those things. But anyway, everything was set up. We thought, right, it's going to be brilliant. Imagine the great surprise people are going to have when they announce it, presumably a few days before the event. Thorin's going to be the desk host of this event. The day I am set to fly to China, I get a call in the morning saying that Riot Global Office, when they got wind of all of this, I don't know why the Chinese people would wait till the last minute. I would assume it's because in the past they were allowed to do things their way and it's at the end someone just signs off the approval at the top. When it got to them, they just killed the deal, instantly dead, flat. It's over, no discussion. And so the Chinese side, the LPL, were entirely on board with this. They came up with this idea. They offered it. They tried to persuade me to stay even longer. And then it turns out Riot Global killed their idea instantly. Has no faith in their Chinese partners, it would appear. Don't respect their judgment. Don't even respect the choices they make over their own subset of what you're doing, right? You know, if something happens after the fact, yeah, obviously you can then say, why did you do it that way? But what, you have no trust in the people who are hiring in that sense. People who know a lot more about League of Legends, by the way, than anyone in Riot Global Office, if I was to break down who these people were. So I'd already booked a hotel to stay there. I already was in a situation where I have a flight that's now going to go home a week and a half after I finish my CSGO event. So by helping out these people, I've now fucked myself, haven't I? Because I then had to pay for the hotel. I then had to pay to change my flight to come back earlier, so I'm not just sat there for a week and a half doing fucking nothing in China. I'm literally out money thanks to this bullshit. It's not just that I even got turned down and I lost the money I would have made appearing on the broadcast as my day rate, and I lost the opportunity to come on the broadcast, and they themselves were short-handed last minute when they thought they had a great setup, something unique, bring a lot of spice, bring a lot in Western audience with a different flavour. No, I even lost money on this scenario. Now, don't get me wrong, yeah, you know what? There's a world in which they were then trying, because the Chinese people were very, very apologetic and felt really bad about this, they were trying to figure out some other things I could do for them outside of the broadcast that, you know, could maybe make money or could do some this way. And I had to tell them, first of all, I'm sorry, like, as we've seen from this incident, you have been overruled by Riot Global. This is basically Riot Global's project. You just get some say in how you execute it. So I can't do that as a favour to you or do that as some sort of a cooperation, because really, I'm not dealing with you, am I? It's always with Riot Global. So why would I now help them out and help their broadcast be better and help them get more exposure when they've just fucked me over completely, right? I'm not going to do that. And plus, I know how esports works. And this is part of what tilts me, is I know that so many other people have been fucked over, marginalized, literally oppressed, like repressed from doing things, saying things over the years by Riot, and so few of those stories have come out exactly because of reasons like this. Because what they'll do is they'll get a good guy within the company, a guy who hasn't fucked you over, a guy who is a cool guy, a guy who says, listen, I don't agree with the way that was done, so you know what, let's sort something else out for you, let's get you something, is there anything you want? Oh, you know what, maybe we can just give you a side job, it's not as good as the job you wanted, we can get you one anyway, maybe I could arrange for something that you'd like, maybe there's a player you'd like me to help you get in contact with. They'll do those sorts of things, and it essentially is a type of hush money. It isn't overtly, it isn't explicitly, but the implication is, take the thing we're offering and just shut up about it. Don't say anything about the bigger thing, what we did to you, right? And that goes above and beyond that. That goes with jobs, that goes with opportunities, that goes sometimes with even making veiled threats, like, if you want to work in this industry and be a commentator going forwards, you'd probably want to keep this quiet, you know, people don't need to know about this. Yeah, it didn't work out now, but maybe in the future it'll work out. That's the kind of story I've heard spun to so many people in this fucking industry. Well, you know what? Even though I knew bringing this video out and exposing this might actually, unfortunately, cause some sort of fucked up backlash on the people in the LPL who were cool people who had a great idea, had a lot of initiative, I thought were actually very bold but very sensible at the same time, booked it all out, were very professional with how they dealt with me, and at the end got made to look stupid by the global office being arseholes and holding petty grievances, or who even knows when it's over, but fuck them anyway, right? And here's the difference. Even though I know those people could get in trouble, they're not going to get in trouble because of me. That's not how it works. There's not a linear chain of effects like that. Like, me upsetting someone at Riot Global doesn't mean that Riot Global person has to be an arsehole to this person for the LPL. So I actually look at it and I see them as distinct effects. If me calling out Riot Global for their behaviour means that they then act in a corrupt and fucking unnecessarily harsh manner or heavy-handed manner to their employees, guess what? That's just in line with them being arseholes to their employees. And you know what? I don't want to help a corrupt piece of shit company who actually seems malicious against people who've given their lives to esports. I mean, I'm not like fucking giving my life for the Emperor in Warhammer 40k when I say it like that. I did enjoy it. I did it willingly, guys. But like, the amount of disrespect and contempt that they have treated people who are lifelong passion guys for esports is unbelievable. Some of the best commentators, people in many fields that have worked in this business and have been disrespected of a Riot Games. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to join that fucking massive line. I'm not going to join that private VIP area you guys aren't aware of. I'm going to call it out. I'm not going to let yet another person be victimized, because I saw so many people eat the plate of shit that Riot served to them, accept a lesser role, accept some form of compensation, accept something that meant that they internally, at a minimum, felt like, I shouldn't say anything about what's been done. Now, as a quick aside, before I go into now, setting the stage of how Riot has treated other people in the industry, and you really get kind of a holistic view of these fucking people and what their kind of mentality is towards others, I'll just throw this out there. There might be some people who'll say, come on, Thorin, why would they want you on your broadcast? You're probably just going to make some sort of edgy joke, aren't you? Well, that's because those people don't know what they're talking about. If you are in a pub or a bar talking with your friends, you might actually be quite bawdy with your humour. You might have sexual humour. You might make kind of a bit of a dodgy joke that you'd normally never make if you were in front of polite company. Now, if next day you go and visit your grandma, you're not going to say, hey, grandma, oh, this girl was sucking my dick last week, and anyway, I come in the face. Like, no, you're not going to say any of that shit, are you? Why would you say that in front of your grandma? Because you understand the set and the setting, you understand what is appropriate tone, you understand where the line is, and you understand what is the effect my words are going to have. So if I have a talk show, it's my talk show, it's my space, I control it all. Yes, I'm within the terms of service of YouTube, but that's it. I am free to do what I want. So why in that setting would I limit myself? Why would I have to act like I was on the NFL on Sunday? Welcome to a lovely day in Denver, Colorado here, folks. We're looking forward to a humdinger of a get. No, I'm not going to do that, am I? Because it's my space. But when I am in someone else's space, and when they have a set amount of rules and certain boundaries, I have always respected those boundaries. So a lot of people in League of Legends might not be aware. In CSGO, not only have I done something like, I think, 60 different LAN tournaments as an analyst, I've also hosted an event or two in the past. ECS Season 3 I hosted some of. I hosted MLG X Games Aspen Invitational at the beginning of 2015. So one in 2015, one in 2017. Seemed pretty apt in it because I've obviously hosted a billion interviews and podcasts. So I was able to roll with the punches from tech interview problems. But more importantly, in terms of appearing on a broadcast, I'd say a broadcast that has way more rules than the Riot Twitch stream on any region, which is How about American television, where you literally have like governing bodies who control what you can say and can fine you and can punish the channel? You can't swear in certain ways. Well, I worked for E-League on their first 2 seasons for CSGO. And that means for the better part of a year, I think it was something like 70, well, maybe not the better part then, but for 72 days, I think it was, in 2016, I was working on E-League. And among those 72 days, let's say there might have been, I don't know, 15 TV days. I think it used to be on a Friday night that we used to do at like 10 p.m. Atlanta time, so East Coast time. We used to be on television. We were on TBS, the number one at the time, the number one basic cable channel in the United States of America. I was live on that channel every week for an hour during the run of E-League Season 1 and Season 2. And did I ever, like, drop a massive swear word? Did I ever make a really crazy, edgy joke? No, of course I didn't. So the implication that anyone might make of, like, well, it's totally logical that you wouldn't be on it. No. And anyone who knows about esports would know that. So the idea Riot are just brand new to it and they could never look this up. Nah, it doesn't buy it. What, are they not in America? Are they not aware of Turner? Are they not aware of TBS? Of course they are. So that's to one side. Now let's look beyond just me, because you might think, well, you're an antagonistic person, Thorin. Maybe it's easy for people to just get rubbed the wrong way and dislike you. Look at how many people have been victimized by Riot. So first of all, let's just set the stage for how they behave as a company. So before we get industry people, how about their users, the people who pay for their game to fucking exist by buying skins and Riot points and all the rest of it, and the whole reason that they have jobs in a company, right? Well, they repeatedly chastise them for toxic behaviour, literally label someone's behaviour in a game toxic just because they get upset and say, oh, will you stop fucking coming in my lane and taxing my minions? And then people are getting banned off shit like that. People are getting banned for saying GG easy after winning a game in ranked. It's one thing if it was in a normals game and that's meant to be fun and somehow you're trying to create a safe space. No, you're in a fucking ranked game playing competitively. And if you say, good game, it was easy. Even though all the disrespect is actually implied there, it's not actually overt. Like, there's nothing technically wrong with saying, good game, it was easy. That's not inherently a bad thing to say. You can just read their mind and know that's evil and ban them from the fucking game and give them temporary timeouts and silence and mute them, as Riot Games has done repeatedly. And this is despite the fact we've all had that experience, right? When you're playing in the game and there's a guy subtly fucking with you. He doesn't just int the whole game. He doesn't type in chat, N-word, 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 fuck everyone, I'm going to kill everyone. He doesn't do that. No, what he does is he subtly ints. Like, he comes around and he accidentally dies too easily level 1. And then he says something sarcastic and then he comes and takes one of your jungle camps. Or he runs in looking like he's going to gank and then runs out and lets you die. And basically is way worse for the actual game state and the outcome of the game and everyone's in all the 10 players' enjoyment than if someone had said some rude words. But if you respond, if you retaliate and you say, oh, fucking, why'd you come in this game? Like, a fucking idiot like you shouldn't even be allowed to play. You should be banned. Get the fuck out of it. If you say all that, you're the one who's going to get banned. That's the precedent they set in their game. They have had spouted all these bullshit platitudes about how, you know, they don't just want to make better players, they want to make better humans, and how, you know, it's about like the way we should behave as people and the responsibility and all that stuff. Meanwhile, who's the father of all that shit at Riot Games? It was a guy called Riot Light, right? And if you ever look into some of the stuff about his private life that came out, about how he was allegedly mistreating women, about how he was literally sending like dozens and dozens, allegedly, of unsolicited dick pics to women, and in circumstances where, you know, I believe it was in a scenario of infidelity where he already had like a long-term significant other and he had these other women he was stringing along, like all sorts of stuff like that. And then this guy's going to lecture you about being a toxic human and about how you getting upset in a video game you pay for and you've invested time into, when someone's dicking around in the competitive mode, the explicitly competitive rank mode, you're not allowed to ever lash out or act in an angry manner in that sense. Meanwhile, not only is Riot Light a piece of shit hypocrite, doesn't live his truth in his own life, but also they have at Riot, as you can see in that Kotaku article, a culture of farting in people's faces in meetings, having people literally have to request that their testicles aren't flicked by their fucking bosses and higher ups. That is the culture within Riot Games themselves. Is that toxic? Is that behaviour that should be encouraged? Is that how your users would be allowed to behave? Would they? No, they'd be fucking banned, wouldn't they? That's why that Kotaku piece opened so many people's eyes. Now let's get to some of the pros, the people who make the esports side of their game possible by being the people creating that great action on the screen. Well, we've had numerous pros be banned, and even when they're banned for things which are kind of fucked up. The way that they're banned is so messed up. So I Will Dominate was banned for toxicity, too many toxic reports, right? Except he wasn't. The actual timeline of that was what they caught him for after the fact, like catching Al Capone on his fucking taxes. They couldn't catch I Will Dominate for what he did, so they had to punish him for some other shit with a witch hunt. He said the story himself. He went to Riot with I'm a Cutie Pie, we're back with their Indignitas, and they were showing some like new skins or something, new character design skins for some of the champions. And I Will Dominate apparently didn't know that the designer was in the room or something. And so him and Cutie were just fucking around. They were just riffing like, oh, look at this shit. Like, what the fuck is that one? That's so dumb, that one. Like, and apparently this woman who designed one of the skins was like, ran out of the room crying like, oh. And then when one of these guys, I don't know, Marc, Merrill, someone heard it, they were like, this will not stand. A woman at Riot has been made to feel bad. We're a couple of years from perfecting that formula. This will not stand. And so he sent his little fucking minions out there to find a way to get I Will Dominate. And you know what? He got him. And they banned him from pro play for an entire year. And then later on, the reason Dominant didn't come out with that story for years is, guess what? After seeing how a lot of people in esports were treated, I would speculate that he felt some concern over what the repercussions might be if he spoke out against this sort of shit. I mean, you'd just seen Groscore get fucking permanently banned off Twitch for saying something about Crepo, which we've now found out, I knew at the time, was actually true, had actually happened. He was actually doing that fucked up shit and he was banned for saying the truth. And the implication was there was some Riot behind the scenes string pulling there, wasn't there? Banned for life. Permanent ban. With no opportunity to appeal. Now, sure, I would imagine it was the last in the line of offences, whatever. But you can see how people are getting treated here. Forgiven, when he was banned in Season 5, the way they chose to ban him was about the most ridiculous fashion I can think of. Well, what they did is, instead of saying, right, well, there's only like 2 or 3 weeks left in the split here, so what we'll do is wait till the end of the split. We'll tell him privately, you're going to be banned. You're going to serve like a couple of the first games of the next split you're going to have to miss, you know. We'll make it so that you are punished, but it doesn't wreck your team entirely. You get to learn a lesson. We'll publicly discipline you. You can come forward in the... No. What they did is they just came out and in a mad, malicious fashion, they actually banned him right towards the end of the split so that his team literally missed the playoffs as a result, couldn't make Worlds, was shit out of luck completely, and basically treated with no respect whatsoever. The same team, by the way, Gambit Gaming, which previously... Gambit Esports, rather... Which is Gambit Gaming? I think it was Gambit Gaming, actually, which might be Gambit Esports now, which previously had been fucked over, if you remember, a year prior, where they'd had that, away match game that was held in the UK, which they didn't tell Gambit in time, so Gambit couldn't get their subs in time, because obviously they were all from Russia, and I think, isn't Edward from like Armenia or something? They were all from like Eastern Europe type area, basically, and so they need weeks and weeks to apply, and people need multiple chances to apply, and they didn't get that, and therefore they had to play with subs, and they lost the fucking games, which ended up being meaningful again. So they lost, I think, the top spot in the league at that point, if I remember my chronology properly. This is all in the same world. And then how about Svenskeren? You think you know the Svenskeren story, don't you? You remember the story? Svenskeren was over. He was boot camping for Season 4 Worlds, which was going to be held generally in the Asian region. And he made his name into something which is clearly has a racial undertone, trying to make fun of someone. And he said, does my name offend you? And the chat log was so outrageous, what he was saying, this Asian person, that he was banned for 3 games. So not only was his team punished, but he was heavily punished. Now, what people never bother mentioning is, what isn't shown there, is what that person did to incite him, what that person did to fuck with him, to get him to the point where he then decided he would lash out at this person and do it in a very stupid and ill-advised manner, and quite frankly, a borderline racist manner, or very least very unfavourable racial humour, which certainly I could understand why someone would interpret as racist. So there was no consideration given to this. None of that was even mentioned. He was punished to like the letter of the law, as though he'd just come out of nowhere and just dropped a slur on this person for no fucking reason. Again, it's always uncharitable the way they treat other people and their fuck-ups. But how do they treat their fuck-ups, right? How about when it came out that Marc Merrill, one of the head people at Riot, founder as far as I know, himself in the past had used boosting. He'd had people log into his account and boost him so he could play at ranks he wasn't at. That's acceptable, is it? If you're a pro player, you can get banned for years for that. Look what happened to Apto in Korea. If you're a pro player and you do even way less stuff than this, you can get banned from competitive play for a year. Have your chance to have a livelihood taken away from you for a year. What was the punishment for Marc Merrill? He gave some money to fucking charity or something. even then, there's a whole thing where, as far as I remember, there was something dodgy that Richard once mentioned where he has like his own charity that itself has come under scrutiny publicly for potentially being run in an allegedly dodgy manner. Then there's the fact that Marc Merrill himself also came out a few other occasions, spouting off at the mouth, not knowing what the fuck he was talking about, talking in public in a manner which could negatively influence people's reputations going forwards when one of the founders of a fucking massive company that runs your industry says these things. Like, for example, when he was talking about how that Spectate Faker stream should be shut down, even though he didn't seem to understand that the guy wasn't restreaming a fucking Twitch stream. He was just streaming from like op.gg type material that everyone had access to, and that the Riot API explicitly, it was said that you were allowed to use this information. He didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. Same cretin that was telling Reginald, owner of TSM, publicly that you should reinvest your money that you're making from League of Legends and spending on other games back into League of Legends. Not knowing the entire time, like a fucking clown, that really people like Reginald and TSM weren't making money from League of Legends. They were bleeding money from League of Legends. They weren't taking some fucking massive wheelbarrow full of gold coins and trinkets and doubloons and fucking like the lost treasure of the Sierra Madre and taking that over and paying the CSGO people and the fucking Rocket League people and the Smite people. I mean, to be fair, I'm surprised TSM can even remember they have Smite people. That, you know, they weren't doing that, were they? They were losing money on your fucking game. And as a result, that ended up backfiring old Mac Merrill's face because Reginald and the other owners came out and then used that as their moment, this faux pas by Marc Merrill and Riot, to then make demands that we want to have franchising. We want to have what is now the permanent partner program or whatever the fuck they call it. So the level of hypocrisy is unbelievable with these people. I mean, this is the same company which in that Kotaku article, I only referenced some of the more mild stuff. They apparently had a culture within their company, allegedly, of sexism, where they were very dismissive towards women. They were literally outright, sometimes blatantly sexist to them, like telling them their ideas didn't matter, or behaving in a manner where like you felt as though you had no recourse if one of your bosses said something fucked up, some sexual innuendo to you. As a result, it not only was so bad that all these people came forwards and leaked all this info to Kotaku journalists of all things, who were about some of the most scumfuck people in the universe. But even worse than that, there's now apparently going to be a planned walkout because there haven't been enough tangible changes in the company that the people do the walkout feel as though they've actually changed that culture. They feel as though Riot just gives themselves a little slap on the wrist. Nah, we won't do that again. Nah, we'll fix that out. Was he tapping your balls? I'll have a word with him. I'll tell him not to do that. Farting in your face as well. Right, okay, there's one. Is there anything else he's doing? There's a lot of things on this list. You know, we've got to go fuck Thorin in about 5 minutes. Then you got the fact, go and look at some of the casters. So how about when Monte Cristo worked for OGN with LCK, right? Now, everyone who's saying, he should just be grateful to be hired to a Riot event like Worlds or MSI. That's because you're a little fucking cock who doesn't know anything about the industry or how jobs and markets work and actually thinks that it's Riot who had the leverage over Monty there. Riot desperately needed Monty for those tournaments. Otherwise, they would be like this MSI is going to be. Like 50 fucking... It's like going... This MSI is going to be like going into an ice cream shop and the guy has 50 flavours of vanilla and it's all just slightly different hints of it and one of it has a tiny little bit of mint in the corner, if you get that scoop. Instead, Monty was like the fucking raspberry ripple, or he was like the fucking lemon sorbet, totally different to the vanilla ice cream, and so an essential contrast for Riot events, right? They needed him way more than he needed them and their few $1,000s they were going to pay him for that event. I guarantee you that if you know anything about streaming, how reward reviews work, some of the offers he had at the time, the talk shows that he was doing me, he didn't need that Riot money essentially, but it was something that Riot needed him. So what he did was, as a man of principle, rather than just take their rate or negotiate a higher rate for himself only, and if you know how the esports industry works, when you negotiate a higher rate for yourself and you're the top guy, they just essentially usually take it from the bottom guy. The last guy hired, they tell him, we can only give you this much, and they might take 200 euros off what he makes and say, sorry, there's only one spot left. And the last guy, the guy with the least leverage, takes the gig anyway for the sake of doing the massive tournament and doesn't tell anyone else that he made less money. But I know these stories. I'm inside the esports industry. I have the ear of some of the little birds out there that you don't have, Riot Games. So Monty decided, as a man of principle, he'd take a stand and he would actually protest that for people like him, Doa, Papa Smithy, they should all receive at least industry standard for a big international event like the International, CSGO Major, Call of Duty I think, I can't remember what it's called in that game, World Championships it's called. He wanted everyone to get that sort of a reasonable rate. Now, Riot refused this outright. They wouldn't budge, and so he didn't attend MSI that year. Then, later on, he had his team literally taken from him. He was forced to sell, and in circumstances where the person you're selling knows that you're essentially like painted into a corner and have to sell pretty quickly, so the leverage is with them, and they don't have to pay you as much as maybe your value for the team would have been if you had the option to not sell, to take the deal off the table. A very powerful bargaining chip in any negotiation. Now, for everyone who doesn't know this, people think that Monty had his team taken off him because of the situation with Maria, where she apparently was mistreated by Chris Badawi, a former owner of Renegades, was owner of part of it, the CEO. He had been an owner in the past, but he'd had to divest that because obviously he'd been banned as an owner. People think it's because of that Monty had to sell. No, that was just the pretense from which to then take the move to say that he had to sell. And the reason he had to sell was they claimed to have evidence that he was going to have Chris Badawi be a future owner, and that since he already had a deal in place already a future owner, that can essentially be treated as though he's an owner now, and since he's banned, that's not allowed, and therefore he had to sell the team. Now, I can tell you, to this day, no such piece of evidence exists. I've even found out from behind the scenes that they don't even actually privately claim to have a piece of hard evidence. What they claim is, allegedly, that they overheard a conversation in public which intimated as much that he would somehow become an owner. Now, first of all, that's such a ludicrous premise that they're in some mad setting, almost like fucking old school 2012 Scara and the Dignitas guys, where them and Curse met up for dinner before an MLG final and agreed to throw the final and like decided was going to play it and just play a bunch of ARAMs and split the money. Like, they're acting like that sort of a ridiculous scenario. Like, one of them was just in the behind fucking Monty and Chris Badawi in a fucking KFC and overheard them like, so anyway, Monty, you're definitely going to give me ownership of the team again. Yeah, pinky swear. And then they're like, got him. I saw it all, Mr. Marc Merrill. And so the idea that went on is ludicrous. And to my knowledge, no evidence whatsoever. But they don't need evidence because within his contract, it said you couldn't sue Riot for more than $25,000 damages. To break that contract would be a massive lawsuit, which could take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so actually, even Monty on this one had to just somewhat swallow it, do what they said and move on. He couldn't, for the point of principle there, potentially lose millions and go to the ends of the earth hounding Riot. He had to just take it and then have every little shithead on Reddit tell him for years to come that he'd done this crime that he'd never done and that he'd been correctly punished, even though he'd been unfairly punished in a malicious manner. And all because, ultimately, if you follow the thread back, he had the gall to stand against Riot. He had the gall to speak out against them. He had the gall to call out bullshit behaviour on multiple occasions by Riot Games. And if he didn't do it, and if I didn't do it, and if Richard didn't do it, who the fuck would do it? It gets removed off Reddit anyway. Like, how is this shit ever going to actually happen? How are we going to get some sort of a change within this company? How about Froskurin? Now, I can't tell you everything about her story because that's her story to tell. I don't know how much she said publicly herself, but I can tell you this much. She used to be a caster for the LPL. It's actually where I first discovered her many, many years ago, back in 2014, around spring 2014, when she did the final. And when she was a commentator there was when it was like a sort of almost like a student setup. It was like just a bunch of people for Passion, Kelsey, it was Froskurin, a bunch of other people, Drexin, and they set up an English language stream that was just done by them, the community, grassroots effort. And she was the clear talent of this group. It was so obvious that even though she hadn't polished her talents and worked on a persona and figured out who she was going to be with her character and built up more technical skills, the base level of talent was so blatant that as someone who's been in esports a long time, I could instantly tell this is someone who, if they stick with it, is going to be one of the best commentators in the world. I didn't just say in League of Legends, in Chinese League, I said in the world for all esports. And you know what? On top of that, this isn't something I think about because I'm not a sexist. But the fact she's a woman as well, and, I mean, this is obviously something that I don't know if at the time she'd actually revealed, but she is also a lesbian. Because of these factors, in the modern world where people love diversity and all this, she should be even more appealing, right? That should be the perfect demographic of what you'd love to have a story in Time magazine about. Look at this woman who's changing the face of commentary in esports, like her, like, in a suit or something, with a mic. Yeah, obviously, in the modern world, that would even for political reasons be a brilliant story, right? Stupid old Riot didn't see any of this, though. So when they started up and took over the LPL broadcast to do an official broadcast from a studio, I believe it was in like Australia or something they were hosting it from, it was remotely done, They didn't bother hiring her for that broadcast, which is why, I've told this story before, I helped create a talk show with her about the LPL called Incoming Aggression. And we did this talk show where she was the Monty to me. She was basically the Monty as if it was Summoning Insight, but this was about the LPL instead. And so it got to show off her talents. And thankfully, I don't know how much part that played in it, but she got back into being in working the LPL. She was able to officially work for the LPL, and now obviously she works for the LEC. And she's since gone on to be arguably the best commentator in League of Legends right now. Great analyst, great commentator, has worked World Finals, now works in one of the best regions. Great stuff, right? Happy story in the ending, but only because she sat through a lot of shit. Because she put up with someone turning her away, discouraging her, literally behind the scenes, while she was in the wilderness, all these battles going on of people telling her disparaging things and things that were borderline sexist. And again, I can't go into details here because this isn't my story. It's not my story to tell, but I'll just tell you the characterization, the tone of how she was treated. And now she's in there, and now she's trying to, sometimes in a maybe a misguided manner, but with good intentions, I would hope, battle against certain aspects of sexism and speak out on behalf of people. Yes, again, sometimes she's done it in an advised manner. She's probably sometimes selected the wrong targets or miscommunicated a message, but I think overall there are probably good intentions behind what she's trying to do because she's been through that battle herself. How about someone like Doa? If anyone in the esports industry hates Doa, you know what? This is where only Thorin can say this. You're probably a cunt. Because I've met a lot of people in esports. And you know what? This is one of the few people where the only person I could even draw a contrast with would be a guy in CSGO we have called DDK. Another person where if you don't like this person or they don't like you, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're a cunt. Because these are two of just the loveliest people you'll ever meet. They're just cool guys. They've got their own quirky sense of humour. There's nothing particularly edgy about them. They're not people who are going to say anything that offends. They're not people that are going to do anything that's offensive. They haven't had beef with anyone in the industry. They don't particularly talk shit about people. These are just guys where it's like, they're lovely. That you take them as you see them. They are who they appear to be. They're just people who everyone gets along with. Everyone likes. Well, Riot even had to give Doa some fucking condescending advice. They even had to basically treat him like shit. Because what happened was, even though he was one of the best commentators in the world, I mean, I actually think he has the most iconic moment in the history of League of Legends. The Faker versus Ryu Z1v1 outplay in Game 5 of OGN Champions 2013 Summer, Season 3. This is a moment that is legendary. He killed it. It was a very serious moment. There's no jokes involved. They were telling Doa over the years, yeah, you ain't good enough, mate. I mean, I actually have the quote here. He said it on Twitter recently. He said, we don't feel you bring the gravity necessary for serious matches. That's what they told him on a Skype call before they offered him All-Stars in 2015. Now, you see the point there is they were only willing to offer him All-Stars because they were trying to tell him, like, all we'll let you do is the fun exhibition tournaments because you know what? You don't really bring the gravity the necessary for like a serious match, you know? And this is 2015. This is 2 years after the Ryu versus Faker Z1v1 moment. These guys don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They wouldn't know their arse from their face if they weren't farting in people's faces. That was fucking fire. I don't even know how I came up with that on the spot, but whatever. It was pretty good. Now, what's great is he even says in that story, I turned them down and they came back a few weeks later with a world's offer. So that's quite cool, actually, that he basically told them, unlike most other people, get fucked. And then you know what? They actually had to then sit down and go, fuck, he's got a point there. Yeah, maybe we should treat this guy with a bit of respect. And gave him the gig he should have always fucking had. Now, another issue there's been at Riot, and I can't tell you who the people involved are here, because it's not something that I've been able to like, let's just put it this way, unless I have something nailed to the nth degree, I don't mention people's names. So all I'll tell you is this. Another thing Riot allowed to happen is something I think is absolutely unacceptable in esports. It is, for me, a blatant conflict of interest. And that is where you let someone who is currently active on-camera talent themselves, they will appear on-camera on the broadcast, take either a direct role of authority or be like a consultant deciding who else gets to appear on camera, how they have to behave, and giving them advice on how to behave. That is something I fucking despise. If anyone knows in CSGO the incident with James Bardolph and Face It, that's one of the reasons I went hard on them. Because I know this is a guy who was fucking over his own partner in the game for how much money he could make. Because on the one hand, he was his partner, his friend. And then on the other hand, he was also his boss, negotiating his salary. And then also he was friends with some of the other casters in CSGO, but then he was not hiring for them for some events, but then he'd publicly make it clear that he thinks he should be hired for someone else's event. Again, massively conflicted behaviour, clear conflict of interest, and quite frankly, I think just malicious to the industry. Even though in that case, I don't necessarily think he went out of his way trying to do that, so I think that's just something that came with the territory. But in this particular case, there is at least one person within Riot who is on-camera talent, someone you guys fucking love if you see this guy. Very, very legendary person. Or maybe it's a woman, who knows? Could be anyone, right? Whatever. So this talent was not only determining which other talent got to work with him, he would even tell them condescending shit. Like, don't ever say that again when I make a point like that. When I make a point like that, you let it stand. Like, don't argue with me on the broadcast. Making ridiculous demands like this, like outrageous diva behaviour, or even making disparaging remarks about other talent. Tell them, like, yeah, you're not good enough for that. You know what? Try to speak with a bit less authority when you're on the desk, because, you know, you don't really get across to the audience in that way. Let the other people give their bold opinions, and you just either compliment theirs or give a side opinion. But try not to speak as though you're an authority on the game, because you're not. You're still very new in the game compared to us. Like, that sort of fucked up, like, gatekeeping behaviour was going on. And so the idea that someone like that gets to behave in that manner, and yet you're being so harsh to all the freelancers, you're treating your players like pieces of shit, you're treating people who actually are team owners like idiots publicly, you're literally disrespecting other people in the industry. I'm a fucking legend in this industry. I don't even give a fuck. Like, I'll tell you that right up. I've been working in this industry for 18 years. I did more last year than most people have done in their entire career if they worked 10 plus years. And you're going to talk shit to me. You're going to fuck me over, right? I don't think so. So you know what? No benefit of the doubt for Riot Games, because it's been too long now. It's been like 10 years they've been around now that have been pulling this kind of shit. No second chances, because they've had a billion second chances. They haven't fucking earned them at this point in time. The level of entitlement, the mentality of Riot Games is unreal. They think of it as, this is our game, our world, our esport. And you know what? You should be grateful if you're even allowed. Think of the words I'm using here. Allowed to work in our scene, to even take part. You shouldn't ask for industry standard rates. Who the fuck are you? This is our game. We made this game. We made you. You shouldn't expect to be able to do content on the side. We own you. Didn't you see that contract you fucking signed with your soul? We own you, Riot Games. You think you should be able to question our decisions or make suggestions as to what we should do? Who the fuck are you? You're not a Riot caster. You're one of those fucking peon freelancers, aren't you? Nah, you do things our way. Oh, you're a woman and you want to work in our industry? You don't get to have authority. You don't get to have a say in what's done. We're Riot Games. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm just going to fart in this guy's face and then go ban a European pro for a year for saying fuck too many times. Well, you know what? I have to say, despite all the people I've known in esports, Monty, Richard Lewis, Froscorin, Doa, one of them I didn't even mention was, well, no one knows this one because it was never publicised. How about when LS mysteriously disappeared from being a commentator for Sport TV, all of a sudden, with almost no fanfare, Crumbs appears and he's just the new commentator there. There's so much fuckery has happened in this industry of Riot Games. It is unbelievable. And half of it I don't even have to say allegedly for, because I got you banged to fucking rights. So you know what? When I've heard all these stories over the years, I'll admit this myself. Because you never fully always know what the other person did, or maybe they said something that annoyed someone. In each individual case, you could look at it and go, well, is it as bad as they're saying? Yeah, could be. Is that some of that plausible? You know what I'll say? Riot Games are like Reddit mods. You never think they're quite as bad as other people tell you until you're the one who gets fucked. Well, you know what? This is my getting fucked by Riot Games story. And as I mentioned earlier, I won't stand for it. I won't go quietly into that night. I won't just take the beating and eat a plate full of shit and say, lovely milk chocolate from Belgium, the finest quality, Mr. Marc Merrill. I don't give a fuck, homie. I'm built for war. So for this, I shall not stand. This video was generously supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Butt Pounder 420, JDubs, Chi Mao, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Now, do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my work? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers for who the guests are on my upcoming content? Maybe you want to take part in a monthly esports discussion with yours truly. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.